Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel, welcome to my Facebook page, welcome to Instagram, however you're watching this, welcome. I'm here with Michelle. She is a amazing person. We're going to hear all about her testimony. We're going to hear about her business coming up in just a second here. I am so excited to bring her to you, to have her share her story with you. It's incredible what she has gone through and how she has turned her darkest times into a business. And Michelle, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad you're here. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and about your business before we get into kind of like the details of what you do? Can you just kind of tell us about your financial coaching?
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to whoever's listening. I am, like she said, I'm Michelle, and I am a certified financial coach. And what that means is it's basically a personal accountability person to guide you through your personal finances in the sense that I help with creating budgeting. I help with understanding how to tackle debt, a good approach for building savings, and managing all of your expenses within your income. My goal is always to try to keep you within your income and being able to take care of all of your expenses with your wants added in there. Occasionally, that means that something small might have to go temporarily, but we, try to do what we can to avoid that if we can.
No, that's awesome. So that's great. So you really help people rebuild, even if they've experienced like never having a budget or never being
Oh,
on track
yes,
to accomplish a goal.
that was me.
Yes, I can't wait for people to hear your story. So I kind of want to just jump into that. We can talk about your business then at the end, and like after you tell everybody how you got here. Your story is so unique. It's so multidimensional. As a child, you probably, like most of us, we weren't shown healthy budgeting in our homes. We weren't told how to create a budget and stick to it. Probably didn't really talk about finances much. Can you talk about how that impacted you, and especially as a teenager and young adult, and the effect that not knowing really much about finances had on you at that time?
I can tell you that I grew up moving time and time again, even from one state to another, and then from house to house for a number of years. So it didn't help anything. But my parents divorced when I was really young. If I remember correctly, I was like 6 or 7 when they divorced. And I moved from one state to another when I was 10. And I don't really remember a lot of conversations about budgeting or managing money or what to do with debt or how to deal with paying the bills and keeping the bills on. You know, back then, I say back then like it was so long ago. Parents really didn't talk to their kids about stuff, but I also didn't hear them talking to each other. I didn't hear my mom talking to her friends about things. Like money was not a topic that was discussed other than we don't have it. We don't have enough. I remember lights getting turned off. I remember very scarce Christmases. And I even remember my mom losing more than one house because of not being able to manage the finances well. Looking back, I believe she did what she thought was best, or did it the best she can. I'm so sorry about the noise. My dog is trying to entertain himself. Um, so basically, all of those things just kind of stuck in my head, and I felt like something wasn't right, but I didn't really know what exactly, and also didn't know how to do anything differently. So I went into my adult life not having a budget, getting credit cards right away, not making payments on time, things like that. And that pretty much landed me, I'm so sorry. Oh, that pretty much landed me in a really bad, what I call a financial pit because of the habits that have built up over time, including not saving any money. If you're not saving any money, putting any money aside, then you don't have any for emergencies. So
Yeah, and so Michelle, just really quick, you at this point in your life, you're a teenager, right? You're probably like 17. You're still in high school, recognizing that you were never taught about a certain thing. You don't really know how to maybe budget or take care of money. What is going on in your personal life also outside of that? Outside of not knowing how to budget, is there anything that was like super pressing to you of what to do in this situation?
so when I was a junior in high school, we tragically lost my brother. He was in the Army, and because he was in the military, he had a life insurance policy um, that was split between myself, my sister, my dad, and my mom. And I was only a few months away from turning 18. When I turned 18, I basically got my share, which was $50,000. I don't know about you, but when you give somebody that's not experienced with money that amount of money, it doesn't usually go all that well. And I actually ended up purchasing the home that my mom was living in from her and moving in. My then boyfriend at the time, who brought along his brother and his brother's girlfriend, and it was just a whole hot mess, to where I ended up losing that home. It got so bad, the whole situation in general. Of course, all the money was gone within months. The situation got so bad. Not only did I lose the home, I lost family, I lost friends. I ended up quitting high school halfway through my senior year and moved out of state because I really didn't know what else to do. And I knew that I was actually contemplating, I left the guy, but I was contemplating on going back to him because I thought I loved him. And my only options were go back to him or leave the state. And I chose to leave the state just suddenly one day, and that was it. And it was a rough decision. Most people might not have agreed with that decision, but it was the best one for me. And I'm thankful today that I did it because it's really landed me in a place that I could have never imagined being.
Yeah, and I just want to pause right there really quick because a lot of times people think I'm in this situation. These are the cards life dealt me. I just have to play them, to the best of my ability, right? They never think that the option is to get up from the table. And you, as a teenager, you had come into this money, you bought the home, you thought things were going to go a certain way, and they went the complete opposite direction of what you anticipated happening, right? And you left that relationship knowing it was abusive, it wasn't the right one for you, and you moved not knowing what would happen. Sometimes, we're rewarded when we take a leap of faith, right? There's grace to land upon, and that brings us into another space for us to create something completely different than what we thought was even possible. So when you left that relationship, what happened after that?
So after that, moved in with a good friend of mine, and it was actually her family that allowed me to stay there. Got a job right away. Started trying to, figure out myself. Ended up getting within that next year. Ended up taking the GED test. At that time, you didn't have to do the courses; it was just taking the test. So I took the test for the GED stuff. I got my GED. I still, like, for the next year and a half, I struggled and I was like, I don't know what's going on with my life. My life is going nowhere. I went, from job to job. Um, so one day I was like, you know what? I want to do something that I believe would make my brother proud. So my crazy tail walked myself into an Army recruiter station and joined the military. Um, so I spent the next 10 years of my life in the military. There was some reserve time, there was a deployment to Iraq, and then there was some active duty time as well. And it's like the time in the military, in a way, further contributed to some of my financial struggles because it gave me more money, and I always had the money because I knew that the paycheck was coming. But they also didn't help me understand how to manage it. There was none of that. There was no talks of that in the military. There was no courses or discussions on managing a budget and things like that. So I really didn't understand still at that point how to manage things. Of course, they always talk to us about our security clearances, and you have financial issues, you might not get your security clearance, but they really didn't help you understand how to deal with it. So
Yeah, I feel like that's a great place to just kind of pause and reflect here. Sometimes also, not only is there like, sometimes you have to sacrifice a lot, and you decided to join the military and to say, like, this could potentially give me something different than I couldn't get on my own, right?
yeah.
And one of my favorite people ever is Colin Powell, and he talks about how the military actually gave him two pairs of shoes. It was the first time anybody had ever owned more than one pair of shoes in his family. He actually joined the military not having any shoes, and he got to the army and they gave him two pairs of boots, and he remembers that feeling distinctly, of feeling like, you know what, that I have clothes, I have shoes. Sometimes we overlook that, those small blessings, and we think, it has to come in a certain type of package, and we overlook those small miracles that are happening every day to us. Colin Powell's story is, by the way, extremely powerful. Y'all should go and look it up. But in your situation, it was really similar. Like, you know what, I need the military just as much as the military needs me, right? Like, I have something to offer that the military needs, and I could also get something from it. But you're right. I was just speaking with a friend of mine earlier today about how the military doesn't do a good job of, one of the things I love about the Army was that they did all the things for me, right? They cooked for me, they did my laundry for me, and everything I need is on the post. And so why would I ever leave? And so they don't teach you about how to manage money outside of the Army. And for a lot of people, especially when you start transitioning out of the military, that's overwhelming. Now you have all of these bills that you never had before. And I know that for people who haven't been in the military, maybe that's like crazy to think about. But imagine if you joined the military when you were young and you never knew any other kind of way. The Army always did everything for you, and so now you're having to leave the only thing that you ever knew, and you don't have the paycheck, right? And you don't know how to budget any kind of thing. And so now you're forced to truly rebuild completely on your own. So, I want you to talk a little bit about that for you. Like, how was it when you got out of the military? What were you thinking about when you were doing the transition? Like, why did you leave? How come you left? A sure thing, if you will. And what was that like?
Ooh. How much time do we got? So reasons why I left the military. I with the relationship that I had been in that I shared about earlier, and some other things that transpired in my life, I was still, even at, you know, late 20s into early 30s, was dealing with a lot of things, pent up anger, depression, all kinds of stuff like that, that I really didn't know how to deal with. And for me, the military really didn't help me to kind of work through that in a positive manner. Um, or more so, I should say, it wasn't as supportive. I think it's more supportive now than it was when I was in. Um, on top of that, I had some medical things going on outside of that. I had multiple surgeries on my arm and I had some back issues. So I ended up getting a medical discharge because of those things. There were certain things that basically just disqualified me because of the surgeries that I had. And that it was hard because I knew that I wasn't going to have that guaranteed paycheck, but I had this thought, I'm gonna call it a thought, that I was going to land a great job because of the skill sets that I had developed when I was in the military, and that I was going to be able to make just as much, if not more, than what I was making when I was in the military when I got out. And I felt that way so much that before I got out, I decided to purchase a home. And I purchased my home at basically the top of the budget from when I was in the military. So I got out and I was actually on like terminal leave for a month because I had leave built up. But then the next month and a half after that, I sat on unemployment because I couldn't find a job. And once I finally found a job, I it was at a temp agency and I was only making about 40 to $50 more a month than I was making on unemployment, which really isn't a lot, but I was done with sitting at home. Like I've been sitting at home too long and I'm not I don't like sitting at home and doing nothing. Like Labor Day weekend is this weekend and I'm like, okay, I gotta stay busy because I'm gonna go stir crazy, you know?
I feel like that's such a good point, Michelle. You had that internal like unction, like, no, I have to get out there and work, even if it's only $40 or more than I make staying at home. To some people, it's like, well, that isn't even worth gas, to drive to the
Yeah.
job. But not for you. You said I need to work. I'm able to work. I want to work. I want to get outside of the home. And so and so talk about that. How much did you end up making compared to what you were, compared to what you were making in the military and how that affected your ability to pay your bills and all that stuff?
So when I left the military, before I left the military, I was making, if I remember correctly, somewhere between 50 and 54,000 a year. That's with the housing allowance included, because people don't always realize, especially when they're getting out of the military, that civilians don't pay you for a house or for housing. So you've got your base income and then your housing allowance on top of that. So with the housing allowance, it was somewhere around 50 to 54,000 when I got out of the military and finally landed that first job at the temp agency. I was barely making $30,000 a year. So that was basically about $20,000 a year less than what I was making while I was in the military. And I don't, that's a lot of money. So I went through a period where I got a roommate for a little while, thinking that that would help to pay the rent. They paid me a little bit for rent, and I would be able to make the mortgage, and that lasted for a little bit. But then it just became too much of a strain. The money was still too tight, and our personalities were clashing. So um, I I did end up, if I remember correctly, it was like about 9 months into being a temp at that company. I did end up getting hired in full time at that company, which gave me a little bit of a pay raise, but it didn't give me much. I think it took me up to I think it was like around 32 or 33,000. So it wasn't a whole lot more. But eventually it just became too much to manage everything. And I was facing the realization that I couldn't afford my house anymore. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to pay my mortgage, pay all of my utility bills, and eat. I couldn't do it all. Um,
And I just want to pause really quick because I forgot to mention we will take questions at the end. So if you want to type in your question, we'll get to you at the end of the broadcast. If you have questions specifically for Michelle, she'll answer them at the end. And then also, I imagine that the realization. By the way, Michelle mentioned that she got her GED, right, and then 2 years or so later, she joined the military. Michelle is about to finish her PhD. She's about to become Dr. Michelle, right? So her story is amazing on multiple fronts here. And I want to make sure that people recognize before we get to kind of the punchline of the whole thing is that you can rewrite your story at any time. You can decide that this isn't going to be my heritage. This isn't going to be the way that I live my life, right? And ultimately, that's what you did at this point. You recognize you can't pay your bills, not all of them at the same time, with the job that you're making 20 grand less than what you were making, even as a young adult who had just entered the military. So what did that lead you to do?
So, fortunately, through my church, I knew someone who was a realtor, so I went and had a conversation with her. And I kind of already had a feeling of what she was going to say. But she helped to kind of break it to me a little bit more smoothly, though it wasn't necessarily easy for me to hear, but I was faced with, I can keep not making payments on my house and end up going into foreclosure, which would eventually lead to a bankruptcy, or I could try to work the system, not like in a bad way, but the right way, and try to give it back to the bank, which for me entailed a short sale. Um, it was about a 9-month process. So with all the approvals and the paperwork and everything, but in the meantime, um, internally, I was feeling very defeated because I had purchased that home right before my 30th birthday, and I felt very proud of myself. It was the second home I had after having to, lose the first house, that I purchased from my brother's insurance. And I also felt defeated because of what I saw my mother go through, and I felt like I was a failure and that I was repeating that same cycle. And
Yeah, yeah, and I think that what you're bringing up now is a really good point. You watched your mom go through what you were now experiencing firsthand, right? Many times, your mom having to move out of the house because she couldn't afford it, and now you were experiencing it. I think that maybe sometimes when we experience things as young adults or teenagers, we're able to kind of gloss over them. I feel like 30 maybe is a big age, right? Like 30 for me, I remember distinctly what I was doing and all that kind of stuff, like feeling I was starting over and that was a weight on me. And so I imagine that we just process things different as we get older. And so when you get older and you're feeling like you're repeating the same thing your mom did you ever feel, Michelle, like you were just destined to repeat this no matter how hard you tried? You were just going to keep doing the same thing over and over? Do you ever feel that way, or what did you think?
absolutely. I mean, I told people repeatedly, I feel like I'm my mother. I feel like I'm my mother. I feel like I'm a failure. And I don't say that to say that my mom's a bad person. Like I said earlier, I believe she did the best that she knew how to do. But when we're going through a really tough situation like that, we can internalize things and make it personal to ourselves. And that's pretty much what I was doing. I was taking what had happened in my childhood and personalizing it to my situation as if it was the same, and it wasn't. Um, it just happened to be that I made some choices that weren't the best choices, and it led me into a situation where I had to put on my big girl pants and walk through it, and it wasn't easy. I still, even with knowing that I wasn't making my mortgage payments, that it still didn't give me enough money. I still ended up having to go to other resources to get food because I didn't have enough to buy groceries for the whole month. I found myself sitting in a food bank for the first time in my life, and I was 33. Yeah, about 30, 32, 33 years old, sitting in the food bank for the first time in my life, and I cried. I was like, I don't understand. Why am I here? And that day was my wake up call.
Wow, I want to get into that wake up call. I want to get into that wake up call, but I want to also just mention like the awakening that kind of has to happen. Right, we all have our own rock bottom, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
We all have it. It's different for all of us. Sometimes people are like, 10 years old and that's their rock bottom. Some people are 70 and that's their rock. They finally figure out what their rock bottom is. And for you, it was this, and I want to get into that in just a second. But I think that what you're talking about right now is so crucial for people to understand. You had a career, you had done everything that you were taught to do, you were utilizing all the resources you thought you had. And then the wake up call was like, I can't afford my house, I can't afford utilities, I can't even afford to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And after you have served in the military for 10 years, this is the place you find yourself in. You've worked for something for a decade. I really want people to just listen to what you're saying, Michelle, because a lot of times people will take on something like, oh, I've worked for X amount of years for this thing and it didn't work out, so it's just not meant for me. And then they give up, and then that's their point, right? We have a lot of people in society who do that. And I really want to hear now, like, what made you come back from that? Why was that a wake up point? Why did you at 33, sitting in a food bank line, decide, no, I could do something else? Why did you think that there could be something else? There was nothing that showed you there was something else, right? Your mom didn't show you something else. And you couldn't show your own self something else, right? You even came into, at the beginning of the story, you shared how you came into a large sum of money, and even money, right? Because we look to the external things. We think, if I only had X, Y, and Z, right, I would be able to do A, B, and C. But that wasn't true. So can you share with us, like, why was that the wake up point out of everything else that you had gone through? Why was that the wake up point, and what did you do with that?
So there's two primary things that were reasons for that for me. First and foremost, I have pretty much always felt, even though I was dealing with different things in my life throughout my life, when tragedies would happen or really tough situations would happen, I would be upset, but something inside would always tell me that it's going to be okay. So it would always just keep me pushing forward no matter what. Even if I was crying through it, I was still pushing forward. Even if I was mad through it, I was still pushing forward because I always felt like, no, this can't be it. And it wasn't until a little bit later in my life that I realized that that was the Spirit of God. It's always been the Spirit of God pushing me forward and internally just letting me know, intuitively, letting me know that it was going to be okay, and just to keep pushing forward. It's tough right now, but you're gonna make it through. It wasn't anything that I heard an actual voice, like people, say they heard God say. Like, it wasn't that. It was just something inside of me that was just basically like, no, we're not going to accept this. Like, you can cry if you want to, you can be angry, you can be upset, but you're going to keep going. You are not going to give up. And the other reason for that, which ties right into it, is my son. I have a son. And along with knowing that God is on my side and that eventually it would be better, I also need to be an example to my son and show him that perseverance in life is what's going to get you somewhere, no matter how tough a situation it is. So yeah.
I just love that. That's so good. Those two reasons are very, very important. I love them both. You so in that food bank line, you just felt like, this isn't where it ends for me. You just had something telling you, no, this isn't going to be the end for me. This is not how the rest of my life is going to be.
So kind of. So I was sitting there, and it was actually later in the evening. They were getting ready to close, so I was there. It was like me and like two other people, and I literally was in tears. I said, God, I don't understand. Why am I here? What am I doing? What have I done to be sitting here in this position? I said, and people say this a lot, and I never thought I'd be the person to say it, but I literally said, I'm a good person. Why did this happen to me? And very gently, he whispered and said, you did it to yourself. And it was the hardest thing for me to hear. But God was right. I did it to myself because of the choices that I made. And now I didn't know that those choices weren't the right choices, but it was my choices. And I always tell clients or potential clients when working with them, there are situations in life that things happen to you that are not your fault. However, that doesn't mean you can't move through it. And we always have a choice to do something to change it. So it wasn't necessarily that day that my whole complete wake up call happened. That was the light that went on that made me kind of start thinking differently and go, okay, all right, it's my fault, but why? And then I started an exploration about different things that kind of will continue on the conversation after you. I know you're like, I know you got something to say, then.
I just want to say, we have a veteran on who's talking about how they saw you on the VRV last night. I forgot to say, Michelle, I think she mentioned also, she's a veteran. We're both part of a group called the Veterans Referring Veterans. Justin was on last week. He is the founder of it. Him and his wife run it. Go check it out. Please support our veterans. You can check out all of their businesses on their website. Yeah, I agree with you, Michelle. It's not like, I feel like taking personal responsibility for how you end up in a situation is so important, regardless of how you got there. Even if it was like somebody did it to me, I had no clue that they were going to do that to me. It doesn't matter. It's just like saying, you know what, this is my life. It's the recognition of saying, this is where I am. I'm not trying to cover it up. I'm in a bad place. I need some help. I need to reach out for help. Sometimes people have a problem coming to other people with issues, right? We don't want other people to know our stuff. And it's a problem because we still that makes us stay in the same place that we are in, even though we want to desperately get out of it. We're saying, well, I'm not going to let people know that this is truly the situation, or whatever we say to ourselves. We can't. We are not created in vacuums. We all are interconnected. And so if we don't tell somebody, hey, this is the situation I'm facing, this is the place I find myself in, how will you ever get out of there? Someone else is your answer. The thing you've been praying for, you're pushing away every time you say no to someone. So I do want to. I know. I'm sorry. I don't want to interject anymore. I want to hear how you got out of that. Like that light bulb came on, and then what happened?
So the light bulb came on, and like I said, I started kind of trying to understand a little bit more about what he meant about that. I did it to myself, and I remembered it was like a year or so before that I went through the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace class, and I started that's kind of where I started to learn a little bit more about budgeting and managing my finances, but I never really took it full grasp. I was still not saving well. I was spending like stupid stuff. I was buying, going out to eat all the time, just going to the grocery or going to the store like Target or something and saying, oh, I need such and such. And I leave there with, spending $150 for things I didn't need. Those types of, silly things. So over the next a couple of weeks, I start realizing this on top of getting with the realtor friend that I knew, who was getting ready to walking me through that process of the short sale. I was also realizing those habits, those things that Dave Ramsey had talked about that I was doing that I hadn't really grasped that year or so prior. And I really just hunkered down and got really, really diligent with it. I got to the point where if people asked me to go do something, I said, sorry, I can't. It's not in the budget or I can't afford it. I stopped getting my hair done. I stopped getting my nails and eyebrows done. Literally everything I possibly could. I actually, when I would go to the grocery store and purchase food, I would get the off-brand, like store brand stuff as much as I could possibly stand. Because, I mean, what else was I going to do, you know?
This is what I'm talking about too, though, about sacrifice,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You were willing to sacrifice like whatever.
Yep.
A lot of people think like, I just don't have the money, right?
Mhm.
But you're a financial coach. Are you certified through Dave Ramsey, or how did you end up getting? You are certified, Dave Ramsey.
Yep.
Okay. And so, yeah, and so you ended up giving up all of the stuff, right? That we kind of think like, oh, I just don't have it in the budget. But you said, I have it in the budget. I'm going to give up all the things that I've normally done, right?
Yep. Yep. I actually, for about 6 months, this is crazy. People were like, what? For 6 months, I had $100 a month grocery budget. That's it. That's what my groceries were for the month. $100 worth of groceries, and I made it work. I used coupons. I bought the store brand stuff. I did the bare minimum. I had at one point for a whole year, I had a grilled cheese sandwich for lunch every day for a year.
No.
I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding. Like, because I was serious about it. I also made sure that I still tithed. And what happened was, because I was obedient to giving back the Lord what I felt was His, or what His word says is His, and being diligent with getting diligent with those finances and the budgeting and sacrificing, blessings were coming to me over and over in so many different ways. So over the next couple of years, it just propelled into something that I never would have imagined. I'm now sitting, just in June, I ended up switching from the job that I was at and got a job with the federal government as a civilian. And that position came with automatic promotions. And then I got connected with another person in the organization who hired me into their department, which also came with automatic promotion. So I am at the point now where I'm actually now making what I was making when I got out of the military. When I started this whole process with the house, I had 5 maxed out credit cards. All of those had been paid off. I canceled 4 of them. I only kept 1 of them. Have no actual credit card debt. I just use it as like a, just kind of keep it there every once in a while. I might put something on it and then pay it right off just to show that I'm using it. My car ended up being paid up. My car, I still owed like $18,000 on it when I went through that house stuff. That's all completely paid off now. That's all completely taken care of. Everything it sold for less than the value. It was like $67,000 less than what the value was, is what it sold for. All of that is technically considered income that you can be taxed on, and the bank could also hold you accountable for that. They completely waived the $67,000, and the taxes were completely waived on that too. So that the taxes on that would have been anywhere between $5,000 and $8,000. So that's a lot of money to be waived. And about a year and a half ago, I was blessed with the ability to purchase another home. So at this point, and I can't consider myself debt free, but I have the mortgage and I do have some student loans. But other than that, I have no other debt. Savings is built up, things like that. So it's just,
Yeah. And
completely.
just if, in case anybody's just joining us now, or to remind viewers later, Michelle she's getting her doctorate. She's just so close to finishing. She's done with her dissertation. She's just waiting on her final defense, which is like the last thing that you have to do. As soon as you pass that, you're considered a doctor. You have your PhD. So it's amazing that you have done all of this. At the start of the story, you told us that you had just gotten your GED, right?
Mhm.
And that you were struggling to live with your mom and to buy that home and your brother's death. There was a lot of other circumstances contributing to why you dropped out of high school, abusive relationship, and all of the other things. This is my show, so I can say whatever I want to say. You guys, Malachi 3 says that if you are not tithing, you're stealing from God. You're stealing from Him. You have to tithe, even if you're trying to pay off debt. And Michelle, you really talked about that. You said, I was still going to tithe. I'm still going to tithe even while I'm trying to pay off all of my things. And that is so important. I'm telling you, it's so important, guys. You are robbing God. Imagine somebody who created all of the things you ever seen, the entire universe, and you're robbing him. You have to tithe. The tithe is so important. I can't state it enough. This is my show, so I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. And I'm telling you, you have to do it. And I'm so glad that you agree with that, Michelle. It's really the 10% protects the 90% that you get to keep. Is not and in fact, that's what it says. It says the Lord will rebuke the devourer on your behalf. And so it's very important that people tithe. If you're not tithing and you're in debt, it's very important that you check out why you're not tithing.
Mm-hmm.
What is preventing you from giving back to the Lord what is His? It was never yours. You're stealing something that isn't yours. And it has a profound effect on people staying in debt or getting free. So I just feel like I need to say that. So you ended up being able to purchase another home. I'm assuming it's the one that you're filming in right now. Um, yeah, you want to talk about that and your son too? I mean, he's older now. Like what's happening? Like what tell us about your life and exactly how everything has panned out for you up until this point. You're about to finish your PhD. Talk about like how all of that feels. You reach all of your goals that you set out to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's crazy because I would have never imagined being in the place that I'm in today, in any capacity. When I was dealing with that abusive relationship years ago, before I actually quit high school, I remember the brother of the gentleman that I was with basically told me that I would never amount to anything. And that stuck with me for a while, and I believed it. And when I ended up joining the military, I started going to college just to kind of like prove other people wrong, and prove myself wrong. And that ended up going a lot better than I expected. And it landed me into not only completing the bachelor's, but going into the master's, which at that point I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this for my career, which really didn't help me per se for what I chose, but it was still a good experience. And then I was done. And then 3 years later, like as I was finishing with my master's, was when all this stuff started with the house and everything. And 3 years later, when I was coming out of that, I had come to a good place. I had fixed, my debt situation. And I allowed the Lord to work in a number of areas of my life. That was when He spoke to me and said, I want you to go back to school. And I was like, for what? What am I going to do? And the pressing to do the doctorate was what it led to. And I kind of like, I was in shock. I was like, no way, no way. But basically, the purpose behind that was to leave a legacy. And I know I'm like not even 40 years old, but to be talking about legacy at as young as I am is crazy. But I do have a son, and I'm also I believe I have a call in my life to impact many people from all walks of life. And so the legacy for me, to put it into a statement, is that no matter how deep the pit you find yourself in, you can always rise above and accomplish more than you ever envisioned. Because that's what happened to me. That's the story of my life. Um, drop out to doctorate is what my friends are calling it. Because that's exactly.
That needs to be a book. That's an amazing book. That's a movie. That needs to be the thing. Yes, Michelle, I love everything that you're saying right now. Drop out to doctorate. Come on. And that was like really the thing when we were talking before about, just your story. First of all, I love the ability for people to practically help other people. So it was like, can you help people who need help with their budget? And need help figuring out how to redo their life after they've experienced something um, catastrophic, and you've not only experienced that your own self, but you've overcome so many obstacles. It's like above and beyond. It's like the real crown of glory. The Lord is setting it upon you. It's like it's not you had no probably personal ambition to do school or to go back to school, and God just wanted you to display his glory in that way. Everything is redeemable is my point here, is that there's not any kind of thing that's outside of God's redemption, his love, and his vision for people. And you're such a perfect example of that, and I just love your story for that reason. So when did you, so tell us about your business and about how you started, when you started, and all of that. Like, what made you decide that this is not only something that not only didn't defeat me, I can help other people overcome it. Like, where was that turning point for you?
So it's crazy because it really wasn't. I don't believe it was necessarily my decision initially. When I started the doctorate thing, it wasn't. It wasn't for my career. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for anything like that. It was something I felt like God was calling me to. But at the same time, I also felt like He was going to use it some way other than just the general concept of the legacy. And I never really knew what it was until about 2 years in. I had been, making strides in the finances on my personal life, and I started working with talking with some of my friends who started asking me questions, and I was showing them things, and their finances were starting to change because of what I was showing them. And a couple of them started saying like, "Why aren't you doing this like as a business?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I never thought about it, and I don't really know how." And the more I thought about it, the more the passion built up to want to explain it to other people, because I know what it's like to be in that place, to feel like you're overwhelmed or under a mountain with your finances and you don't know how to get out of it, or maybe you kind of do, but you don't have that that oomph to do it because the overwhelm is so heavy. So I built that passion up through what I went through, to not only help people out of the situation, but also to help them avoid it altogether, if at all possible. And I ended up getting close with someone I knew from church who started her own business as a business coach. And through conversation with her, we connected, and that's how my business got launched. Essentially, is through encouragement from friends based on my own personal experiences and what I was sharing with them. And really, obviously, you can tell by now, it was all God the whole time, but he used these little things to kind of guide the process. So.
Wow. And so that leads me into kind of like where you are now. I want to talk about your business a little bit. I love that you were talking about how all of these connections really came through your church, which is so amazing. It talks about that really speaks about the community that you belong to is really what I'm taking away from that. When you're in the community that you need to be in, your resources, whether that's people, places, money, skill sets, whatever, it comes to you when you're in the place that you should be at. So back to your business, I want to really talk about this because you just launched a course that can teach people about budgeting, about getting back on track. I mean, this is really your heart for the issue, right? Like, let's just cut to the chase, which is that who cares about what the background is? Who cares about what horrible situation you find yourself in? How do we get you out of that situation? How do we get back on track? How do we get you to your goals? And so you just released a course. I mean, I know you do individual coaching, and I do want to mention that you do individual coaching, one-on-one coaching, but you also just released a course, which I want you, if you can, just talk about why you developed that and how people can find it. I know it's in the description, the links to all of these videos in the description. But talk about that a little bit. How did you decide to launch that course specifically? What can people get from that one?
So there's a couple of parts to this. So number one, God's word talks about the importance of a foundation. And when you have a solid foundation, then pretty much everything else is going to be easier. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but it's going to be easier. And what I believe is that when it comes to finances, budgeting is the foundation. Outside of God in general, like God is overall, but your foundation is going to start with getting that budget right, getting it started and getting it aligned to within the parameters of your income, as well as tithing and saving and working towards your financial goals, whatever that may be. So that's part of the purpose of building the course, was just to kind of put that foundation out there. But also on top of that, I know that one, not everyone can afford the one-on-one coaching. And I wanted to provide another opportunity to be able to learn from me, learn what I've learned, and not be as much of a cost. On top of that, literally just lost my thoughts.
Okay, if it's okay, then yeah, if you want to just think about your thoughts, that's okay. I'm going to interject just real quick. Michelle has a bunch of freebies on her website. So if you go into the description, no matter what venue you're listening to this on, if it's on Facebook, if it's on YouTube or Instagram, you can check and see that I've put some links in there. If you subscribe to her mailing list, she has 4 different freebies. Just go ahead and email her. Don't sign up 4 times. Just go ahead, email her, and tell her, I want all of the freebies, please. She'll send them all to you, okay? What I want to also just really quick touch on, Michelle, before bringing you back on, if you want to talk about anything else, before we answer questions as well, is you have mentioned something during your whole conversation, which is that you were in the line, right? You were in the food bank line. You were thinking about how God had said you did this to yourself. Right. And that kind of rebuke, that kind of advice saying, hey, I don't, this isn't my best for you, but you decided it. You get to decide what you choose in your life. And I talk about this so much, I can't even tell you. I talk about taking ownership over your decisions because I know that this is the path to freedom. I know it firsthand. Don't even ask me about how I decided that this is the thing. I know it because it's my own personal experience. And so what Michelle is talking about is that the advice to heal depended on her ability to hear the word of the Lord and to do what he had asked her to do. And it's so important that you follow that, right? If you can't take correction, if you can't take rebuke, then you should not expect to receive increase because you're not stewarding what you've been given already. And that's really like something that is so profound to me, is that how many people are like, oh, I would do anything to change my life. And you tell them one thing to change their life and they will not do it, right? And I see it all the time in my own coaching practices. It's like, I can tell what the root of the issue is, and I'm telling you what the root of the issue is. And if you change that thing, you would get a different result, and people won't do it. And they paid me a lot of money to tell them that thing, and then they don't take it. And so no matter how much people say they want it, and no matter how much you tell them the words, that doesn't mean that you can actually walk it out for them. So so that was a really great point that you brought out, Michelle. But I do want to make sure that people know about your course, which is like price point. Everybody can afford it. Everybody can afford it. It's in the description of this video so that people can go through. And your freebies are actually like really personal, right? You can click on things and enter into your exact budget, your exact situation. So your mailing list is really important for people to subscribe to. You want to talk about any of that stuff?
Yeah, so I actually remember the thought. The other purpose in building that course is also because I budgeting or finances in general is a very intimate topic. So intimate that I believe it's just as intimate as letting someone into your bedroom. Not everybody wants to do it, and you shouldn't do it with everybody. And because I understand that, I get that everybody might not want to let me sit down with them and look at all their stuff because that's allowing me into their bedroom. But if I give you the tools and resources to be able to do it yourself, you may be willing to sit down and do that. So that was another purpose of creating the budgeting course, which is really, it's only 5 days. And you're going to basically get a daily email with content in the email, a video that's approximately 10 minutes long, and a workbook that is roughly 10 pages long with all kinds of little tools and resources. Some of the documents have links that take you somewhere else with more information. And it basically, the course will walk you through the whole process of creating a budget. I have Excel spreadsheets that I'm giving you for free in the course, essentially, and a bunch of other little tools and resources that will help you along the way in that process. So it's really a jam-packed course with everything that I would do with you for a fraction of the cost of the one-on-one coaching.
I love that. And I just want to talk about something really quick too, which is that both Michelle and I are business owners. We love what we do. And, you know, Michelle is offering something very specific with her financial coaching. You have to get your finances in order. I always say body, mind, right? Your spirit and your finances. You have to have those things in order if you want to do any kind of thing that's going to leave a legacy, which you talked about a lot, Michelle, in this time. We are both business owners, and there's not a limit on how many people can own businesses, and there's not a lack. In other words, so if you have a business idea and you're debating about whether or not that will ever come to fruition, maybe it's like I can't imagine myself owning a business because I have all of this debt. I'm living in my own car, or all of the things that people could put up as barriers. there's always there's ways to overcome barriers. It's the reason bridges were invented. Someone said there's a river here and I need to get across a river. I mean literally every kind of thing that you look at in the natural world, it will tell you that there's something to overcome. And we are meant to be those things. We're meant to be overcomers. And so it's really important that I think you not only think like straight away. I mean, Michelle, when you were trying to get out of your debt situation, when you were specifically thinking about like I can't even afford food, how could I build a business? But it's possible, right? It is possible. It's absolutely possible that you have nothing and you can still build something from it. Because what you're going through, a lot of people, this is what I feel like so often is that people throw away what they're going through. They just want to forget about it. I just want to forget about this hard time. I want to go into the next time. I want to go into a good time where I'm making enough money, I have a good job and all this stuff. That hard time that you're throwing away is the blessing. You're missing out on reaping the thing that you should have in that time. So for you really were like, this is crazy, right? But how did you decide to make a business of it? Like, what was the process of deciding, like, you know what? Not only can I overcome it, but I'm going to make a business from it. I'm going to make money from the thing that tried to cost me so much money.
So, really, it was starting with the idea that my friends were saying that I could. I never would have thought about it for myself, even after all the things that I had, persevered through. I never thought, oh, yeah, I could be a business owner. But I started actually allowing those closest to me to speak into my life in that manner. And I took the opportunity to meet with my friend who was a business coach, and she actually has a group. So she does one-on-one coaching, but she also does group coaching. And I sat in the group coaching, and one day in the group, we just pretty much like brainstormed my passion. It's really all it started with was just understanding my passion to want to help other people through what I had went through, or help them avoid what I had to go through. And through that, we developed this coaching concept, which actually started off as 3 different types of coaching, but over a course of 6 to 9 months evolved into kind of like making a ball symbol. Like it just incorporated together. So I don't just do the financial coaching. I incorporate motivational and goal success coaching into it, because in order to achieve the financial dreams you have to set goals, which means you have to achieve those goals. But that also entails you having a certain mindset in order to get to that point in general. So that's like, it's all tied together. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Everything in life is tied together. So if you don't have in fact, the word says, I pray that your soul would prosper, right? I pray that you would prosper even as your soul prospers. You can't have anything else prospering if your soul doesn't prosper. So if your thought life doesn't prosper, if your will doesn't prosper, if your emotions aren't prospering, nothing else will prosper. And that includes finances. And so it's so important that we pay attention to what's growing in the garden of our lives. Whether that's our thought life, our emotions, our goals, our finances, any kind of thing that's growing in the garden, we need to pay attention to it. If you were, Michelle, one question did come in, and I just want to take a quick moment of your time to answer. If you were homeless, how would you start? I mean, how would you experience, how would you start if you were homeless? You just need to start somewhere. Sometimes homelessness can lead to a bunch of other issues where we have people, not getting tracked at all, no medical, no benefits of any kind, whether that's state or federal, coming into them. So how would you recommend somebody just start over from being homeless, and regardless of the period of time? And in fact, does that play into it? The amount of time that you're homeless? I really don't know. Can you speak to that? Do you know about how to restart? I know that anybody can start over. How would you recommend it starting
So
over?
So the first thing I'm going to say is not easy to hear, but like you said, we have to be able to accept. Um, you use the word rebuke, but just that recommendation for change per se. But so the first thing is we have to be able to put our pride aside. It's hard to do, but we have to be able to put our pride aside to realize that we're in a particular situation that may or may not be because of the choices that we made. It might be because something happened to us, but we're still in a predicament. And that means that we might need a helping hand. We might need someone else to help us out of that situation, or at least give us opportunities to be able to help ourselves out of the situation. So there are a load of free resources all over Google. If you have the ability to search the internet at all, there's state resources in every single state that are geared towards helping individuals that are in homelessness situations, including food banks. Like I've been there. There's homeless shelters, and I know that they're not always the greatest place to be, but if you have to stay there for a week or a month just to be able to get yourself to the next level, isn't it better to sacrifice that little bit of time so that you can get yourself into a better situation? When I let the house go, I was afraid I was going to be homeless because all the rent, like the rent from my area, was way more than what my mortgage was even and I didn't know how I was going to be able to make a rent payment. I ended up in a income-based housing complex for about a year and a half before I ended up getting in a place that was a little bit better than that. So those types of resources are out there too. There's low income and then there's middle income places as well. So you may not have to be in a homeless shelter per se. You might qualify for one of those income-based places as well. So that's where I would start.
That's Yeah, Michelle, that's so good. I always tell my clients too to not sacrifice what they want now for what they want most.
Yeah.
And so what you want most has to be, in the forefront of your mind. And even if you have to sacrifice something for right now, it's not forever. And your story is such a testimony of that. You have such beautiful pictures of your son on your Instagram. Can you just talk a little bit about what his ambitions are in life and where he is, and just kind of just quick tell us how we can follow you. I know the descriptions are, the links are in the description of these videos, but tell us how we can find you.
So to find me both on Facebook and Instagram, it's at Dr. Michelle Marie. I do have the doctor on all of my social media and my website in anticipation for this completion. It's all part of the website. I was supposed to be finished already, but we're persevering through that. So, but it's Dr. Michelle Marie on all my social media. But as far as my son goes, he is 16, turned 16 in February, and he we were both, his father and I were in the military, and there was lots of moves from that. He also has been primarily with his father during his school year because of the military aspect and the moves. Um, but with everything that he's kind of experienced already in his small 16 years of life, he's built up his own passions. And he actually aspires to be in the FBI one day. Um, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I've always told him, because so many people for so many years told me what I couldn't do. I've told him for years, never ever let anybody tell you what you cannot do. Never ever. And I told him, even me. And he used that against me one day, of course, but he has this dream of wanting to be in the FBI. So we are already doing things to plan ahead for college, or for him to go to college. And he's already thinking, like, if I can't get scholarships or be able to afford college, I might go in the military so they can help me pay for college. Like, he's already thinking about, different things financially that I never would have thought of at that age. And I believe it has a lot to do with what I've been through and how I've taught him things along the way because of my experiences.
Oh, for sure. One of the things I was talking with my friend earlier today is that he said, "Oh, tell me about how you joined the military at 17." Is the moral of the story not to leave your child alone at 17? By the way, that's a true story. That's how I joined the military. I said, "No, the moral of the story is to not tell your child you can do whatever you want." Because my parents told me I could do whatever I wanted, and I really did believe them. I really did. I said, "Oh, you know what? The Army, I feel like I could do it." And my parents told me, even at 17, "You're not somebody who joins the military." I said, "Nope, I feel like that's what I need to do." So that's such a good example, Michelle. I love that. And I love the way that you are raising your child. I mean, the generational things that we face are only broken when we break them, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
when we break them. We have to be the example of what is possible for another generation. And I know Adrian is going to come on in a couple of weeks here, and he's your child's like godfather, right? And it's so important that we see what our parents went through, and that we know we can do so much more than that, and that our children see what we went through and they can do so much more than that. So it's never like ending. It's never ending. It's never supposed to be like that's a ceiling. It's supposed to be the floor of what our children build upon. And I love that you're building that. That's amazing. Yeah, so I just want to recap really quick. Go and subscribe to Michelle's website. Please email her if you want all of her freebies, because she will send them to you. All of her freebies are like personalizable and very usable, user friendly to what you are going through. And she also has that course out that she just published. Michelle is about to finish her doctorate. I love what did you say before? But from dropout to doctorate, from dropout to doctor. I love that. I love that because it's so amazing what you have gone through, where you are now, and what you're stepping into, Michelle. I know that this is just the beginning of your brightness. The brightness of your rising is only beginning, and what you have in store is so much bigger than what we've seen even till now. And it's awesome the things that you can do and the resources that you have even for viewers now. So thank you so much for being on. Is there anything else that you want to say before we end?
So I wanted to point out specifically because there was a question about the homelessness. It leads me, and we were talking about financial crisis. One of the freebies that I have literally is titled Financial Crisis Survival Guide. And there is a number of different things in there, including links to other resources that deal with financial crisis. So if that is your situation, that is definitely a really good one to consider that will help, kind of give you some different thoughts and tools in moving out of that.
You guys share this broadcast, please. Share it with the people who need to hear it. Even if that doesn't describe you, if you know people, if you know that your audience will pick it up and they're the people who need this, please share it. Michelle has resources that can help anybody recover from the financial situation that they are in and step into the fullness of what they were created to step into. Michelle, thank you so much for being on, and I just so appreciate it. You guys, if you want to contact her, please find her in the links of the description of this video. Follow her on social media. Go subscribe to her mailing list and use her resources. Most importantly, subscribe to her or sign up for her online course. You guys, if she can do it, anybody can do it. Literally, I love her. I love her tagline from dropout to doctor. That's amazing, Michelle. You should be so proud. I know heaven is looking down on you and just beaming. Your brother is as well. And so, guys, please share it. Please tell everybody that you know about it, and we will talk with you next week.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.